1 minute kind of thing? You let me know. Is it 4 now? Okay.
Let's go let Alexa.
Yeah, they can't change that.
I'm sure they can. Because they do.
Apparently not.
Okay. Let's rock and roll.
Okay, everybody, it's about 4 o'clock. Welcome, and we will call to order the community safety meeting. It's May 9th, 2023, 4 p.m. So we'll get going. The first thing we have are the minutes from April 12th from community safety. And if we can have a motion to adopt those minutes.
Move adoption.
Okay, moved and seconded, thank you. There's one addition to the agenda. That will be Councillor Heed, the consumption of liquor in public places, and if we can make that 7B, I think. That will work. You good with that, Councillor Heed? Okay, thanks. The next community safety meeting is scheduled for June 13th in council chambers. And with that, the first item is the Animal Protection Services Monthly Activity Report, number 1, and I believe Ms. Atcham is coming forward. Thank you, and if you have anything to add, please go ahead.
Through the chair, nothing to add.
I don't think your mic wasn't on, but
Through the chair, nothing to add.
okay, great. And if we have any questions?
Move receipt.
No questions, no comments? Okay, moved and seconded for information. Great, thank you very much. Next is the Property Use and Parking Enforcement Monthly Activity Report. And staff, if you have anything to add, please go ahead.
To the chair, I have nothing further to add, and I am open to questions.
All right, are there any questions? Yes. Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, just on our GS.
Sorry, Bill, you're not on quite yet.
Just on our GS 20.
Bill.
In.
Can we just put Bill on?
Okay. Am I on?
There you go.
Okay, just on our CS 20, short-term rental offenses, March 64 year-to-date. We're still not getting the message across? Are these new perpetrators or older ones?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, there is a combination of positive messaging that's been underway through corporate communications along with staff, and we are seeing some new operators in play. At the same time, we're exploring new methodologies of doubling down on enforcement vis-a-vis software tools. So if the message is not getting out there, we can definitely revisit our corporate communications pathways, but enforcement will be stepping up.
I guess my question here is, there is a process by which you can carry out and obtain a license for a short-term rental. It doesn't take much to come in and fill out the proper documentation, et cetera, and get it. And I'm just kind of wondering, we should hopefully have zero as opposed to, it's not as if we are not accepting them, correct?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we have seen a significant increase in our short-term rental license applications and acceptance rate. And I think that's gone hand in glove with the enforcement campaign, but more importantly with the proactive education campaign. So we have seen that uptick, which is very encouraging.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments from committee? I see Councillor Landers.
I have a question. Sorry, is this the,
Property use 2,
oh, which pages?
15 to 22.
Okay, on page, thank you through the chair, on page CS 18, stop work removal orders, is 14551 Westminster Highway, was that a site that had an approved fill application?
I don't have that information right now, but I can get back to you with that information.
Sure, yeah, a memo would be great. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much through the chair. We had a memo recently about sort of RV encampments on various roads in Richmond. How are we doing on that as of today?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we've had a successful operation recently on Vulcan Way, and that involved a significant number of resources locally here with the city and the bylaw department, as well as other departments, including the RCMP and provincial players as well, including the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. That was a successful operation. And we have seen roughly the normal amount of activities we would anticipate as the weather improves. But staff are regularly proactively patrolling areas that we've known to be frequented by RVs with people experiencing homelessness, and we're on top of it.
Yeah, I read that memo with great interest because I've been to Home Depot and seen them literally lined up in the back. And the fact that you could deal with it so efficiently, but with compassion, is very much appreciated because, I mean, as the report pointed out, many of these people had mental health issues. And the fact that you brought in the province and others, I think that was a really well done operation.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we were alerted to the fact that some of the operators had some disabilities, so it is potentially that they could have been mental health related, but they were more of a physical health disability related.
And many were seniors.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Au.
Yes, this is regarding the short-term rentals. Now, I know that we are taking actions based on complaints, and I don't know, and I think always, people ask, oh, I have some people running Airbnb near my neighborhood, and should I complain, or how do I know if they are registered or not? So, I mean, is there any way that people can easily check and say, okay, this is really legitimate, then they don't make a complaint, but if they identify some suspicious non-registered operations, then they make a complaint. So is it an easy way for people to find out what's happening in their neighborhood?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, there are different types of short-term rentals. For a bed and breakfast, it is easy to find out if there is a registered bed and breakfast because the city's website has a map. For other types of short-term rentals, such as boarding and lodging, the best way of confirming if there is a licensed operator there is simply to contact the business license department. And then if you're in a strata building, permission of the strata is required. So residents that are unsure of whether there is a licensed short-term rental in a strata corporate building can contact their strata.
So there's a map that people can go to and find out.
Through the chair to Councillor Al, yes, there's a map for bed and breakfast related short-term rentals.
Okay, good, thank you.
All right, thanks. Anything further? I don't see anything, so if we can move that first and second for information.
Recommendation.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. And next on the agenda is the business license activity report for the first quarter. And if you have anything to add?
To the chair, I have nothing further to add, and I'm open to questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments from committee?
Move the recommendation.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next, Richmond Fire.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I have nothing further to add to my report, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, great. Let's see what committee has to say. Councillor Heed.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Junior Chair. Did I say that out loud?
Yeah, and I'm going to record it and keep it.
Chief, medical calls, and I want to thank you very much for on the overdose poisoning incidents, separating the narcotics and the opiates from other poisoning. And, 12 is a considerable amount, and I think that's something that we as a committee and as a council in general need to be very aware of. That's what the bulk of the calls for poisoning as it relates to our opioid crisis that we have around the world. So I wanted to thank you for that. Of interest's sake, On the drowning, I noticed 2 for this year. Am I reading that correctly? CS 33.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, you are, and my apologies, I don't have any information here about those 2 incidents, but I can certainly get back to you on that.
No, you don't have to, but I hadn't heard of anything, and certainly nothing that made the media, in a sense. And I know you are involved at times to recover bodies from the river that have floated down from a suicide or something like that, but that just kind of stood out to me. I don't know if the chief has anything further on that from his point of view. But again, I want to thank you very much. I noticed your response time at scenes was up a little bit, but based on our discussions, you're not overly concerned with that.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I'm not concerned about that time on scene. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, through the chair, thanks for the report, and one thing that really jumped out at me that was really phenomenal is the 99% on CS 29, that 99% of property values were protected from fires. I think that's really impressive. $99 million of assets of buildings were in fire incidences, and 99% of that was preserved. I just found that really amazing. Thanks for that. And also on the medical incidents, just seeing the big 54% increase in medical incidents, but then seeing the breakdown, it's just interesting to see that some things are very stable, like even the like falls and even overdose poisonings are stable from last year, but that things like breathing problems and unknown illnesses and unconscious faintings are very dramatically increased. I just don't know, is there any environmental factors that anything's been related to things like breathing problems, like air quality or anything like that?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, thank you. The environment certainly does create an issue which assists in these calls being increased and the need for people to call for our services and for BCEHS. It would be presumptive of me to make a determination as to what the reason or the cause of that is without analysis, and I believe that would be more in the purview of Vancouver Coastal Health to be able to explain exactly where that was.
So I think if the numbers continued to be higher than usual for a long time, you would probably ask for that from them, from BCH.
I believe we can. I also can comment too that I take a look at the data that we capture for our call response when people request our services. And between the last number of years, there's just more people out doing more things right now than there had been in the last couple of years. So that may very well be an increase.
So still in the normal range. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm also going to say thank you for listing the narcotic in your medical calls by type specifically. So 12 narcotic opioid calls. Do we know if most of those were at home or in a residence or whether they were on the street?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I can dig further into our RMS to take a look at that. We do attend many environments where those products are present.
Yeah.
And also it's good to note that when we attend in response with the BC Ambulance Service, and that at that time, sometimes those narcotics may or may not be prescription as well, and so it's a single capture for that data set for us.
Okay. The reason I ask is we have had people say that we need, an injection site, but from what I understand, from the little I know about it, is that actually most of the overdoses seem to be in a residence, not out in the middle of the street or on a SkyTrain. So that's why I wouldn't mind a little more information on that.
I'd be happy to look into that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just for a point of information for Councillor Day,
Okay, you're on.
we did have a memo from the coroner's office on the death. Recently, that was in our mailboxes, and it's all over the map. But is public spaces,
private residence and elsewhere. But I know that information was provided to us, and I think we can continually get that as year-to-date each month from the coroner's office.
Thanks for that, Councillor Heed. Anybody else with any comments for the chief? Don't see anybody online either, so, yeah. Move for information. Second, someone? Okay, great, thank you. Thanks very much, chief. And next, we have the RCMP activity report. I'll ask again, Carol. Chief Superintendent, welcome.
To the chair, councillors, and member staff, good afternoon. I don't have anything to add to this report. There are obviously some numbers that have fluctuated for this month, but I welcome any questions and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thanks. Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Chair. Chief, I'm looking at some of your stuff on CS 43, and you know, the numbers aren't alarming to me as far as that goes. I think it's great, you know, 3 of the 4 robberies reported this month. You've identified suspects. Suspects identified in 83% of the sexual offenses. Shoplifting is good, but of note, and I think we should pay particular attention to this, and it's, you know, the work of you providing this data to us is, of the 32 suspects identified in shoplifting, 29% of them are Richmond residents. Do we have any indication where the remaining 60 or whatever, what's the math here, 71% are coming from?
Yes, thank you for that excellent question through the chair to Councillor Heath. So 28% do account for residents of Richmond, and 38% account for those who travel here from Vancouver. And so we have a strategy in place, as I have mentioned previously, through our crime mapping data, CompStat reporting, and our crime reduction initiatives. We will be targeting shoplifters here. It's going to be a regular occurrence, obviously with other offenses as well, break-and-enters, commercial break-and-enters, residential break-and-enters. So a lot of focus has gone in those areas, and those numbers have come down. But shoplifting is another one that's in the queue for our property crime unit to take over. And we'll be working in conjunction with our partners from BC Transit Police and loss prevention officers as well. So yes, 28% from Richmond, 38% from Vancouver.
That's interesting. So just my follow-up question is, are you recognizing these people as chronic/prolific offenders, or are they new offenders?
Through the chair to Councillor Heath, we are also compiling a data on those who are these individuals, where they reside, what's their connection to certain places or certain cities. There are some chronic offenders, and through our targeted enforcement on our prolific offenders and priority offenders, we'll be targeting those individuals first. We know the high crime areas where most of the shopliftings occur, and we'll be targeting those places first.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just a couple of things. First of all, kudos. Our little, what I call magazine, to me is invaluable for the public to get a hold of, and it has tremendous amounts of information if one would read it and refer to it. So kudos to whoever's doing that. But I'd like to see the city, not necessarily through you, get that little 4-pager out to more people. I don't know how we do it. Whether we can put it on the website, yes, you know, but we all assume everybody's got an iPhone 14 and a nice screen, and guess what? 80% of the people don't. Maybe the kids have it, but the people that are affected don't. But anyhow, I'd like to also see it focused, because I'm going to ask you two questions, actually. One, be interested to know how many catalytic converters have been reported, okay, and how can you prevent down near me on Springfield, parked on the road, somebody's having a shower, it's gone 6:30 in the morning, and not a heck of a lot. The other is fraud, and the kinds of fraud, everything from an email to a telephone, you know, and it's not necessarily escaping money, the fact that you're even billed for a phone call. If you answer and say yes, boom, you've answered a question at the other end, and it probably cost you $75 or $150 or whatever. So those kinds of things to be put in the newsletter, but also I'd like to see just some categories. When I'd heard, I think Councillor Allen and I were talking about a lady in Burnaby, was it? $3 million? $3 million? Seven, okay. I mean, when you hear that, you think you're watching a movie, and it's, you know, where did that come from? And that's part, and can't believe that that took place. And so, just to protect the others, the people that don't have it, and many of our seniors, to be quite frank with you, they don't have iPhone 14s. They don't have it. They're lucky to get to the senior center and buy themselves a lunch in some cases. So we need to protect them as much as possible, but through information.
Thank you, and if I may, through the chair to Councillor McNulty, both really valid points when it comes to catalytic converter thefts. We've been on top of that for 5-6 months now. We are tracking them. We know the prolific offenders. Some of them, I mean, they are transient. So, you know, some operate today, they're in Richmond, tomorrow they're in some other city. A number of them have been arrested in other jurisdictions. It's a phased approach that we are using. Obviously, we want to gather information, intelligence, and then we want to formulate an action plan, and we have a number of action plans that are underway. And sometimes it's prolific individuals, 1 or 2 or 3, who can create most of, who will commit most of the crime. And that is something on top of my list, and that is something that I even discussed this morning during my weekly meetings, and that is part of our crime reduction meetings as well. So we'll stay on top of that. There are a number of programs that we are also exploring, so more news to come on that. With respect to fraud, I will say we have done lots of education to the public, and will continue to do so. But it is very disheartening when we see individuals, especially our seniors, scammed of hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and through the RCMP and even my messaging is like, anytime anything is too good to be true, you know, just step back, take a moment, call a friend, call a relative, Google something, and just protect yourself, because in this day and age, the way things unfold so quickly on the online system, the money can disappear very quickly, especially cryptocurrency scams. And I would just add that just recently we had a number of incidents here in the city where few individuals wanted to sell something on an online platform. And the items were advertised, but when the meet took place, the individuals robbed them and took off. So we are working on another initiative here for safe exchange of, if somebody wants to, sell something. And so there's more news coming on that. So we'll have established a site where individuals or people can meet in a police environment where there's cameras and there's, other, it's a proper exchange setting for individuals to ensure that, we have less victims and there's less fraud being committed. So please stand by on that. More news coming on that later.
If I could just follow, historically, And so Mrs. H.M. can maybe help. At one time, the catalytic converters, for example, are going to a destination and somebody is buying them, or nobody would steal them. Well, we went through that with copper piping a number of years ago in the city of Richmond, okay? And we did have an audience, and we brought in some of the men and women that bought things, and I don't know if you can, maybe it's before your time. Okay, I'm going historically. And we did get some positive results, like to say, hey, you got a business license in Richmond, come on, it's not my converter you're paying for, it's, and we did something. I know it's not a police thing, it's something the city did. And I'm not sure whether and where they're selling them and stuff like that, but the idea of maybe all the cities should be asking who, through the business licensing department, Joe Smith over here buys X, Y, and Z, we're going to come and, and inspect what you're taking in. And that, and obviously, maybe I'm being too naive, but it was effective at the time. And I'm not saying it can't be anymore. If you don't try and work together, we're all in this together, so. Any comment, Mark?
Through the
Before
chair
your
to-
time, too.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, I was in a different capacity at the RCMP at the time. There was a scrap metal task force that was created, and Richmond was part of that. Out of that initiative, there was the provincial government stepped forward and regulated the scrap metal industry, and they must keep track of records to that effect. Certain cities have enhanced this, so to speak, but those registries and those logs are available by the business owners and operators. The city also has the joint operations team, which does explore certain potentially problematic businesses and works closely with the RCMP and the business license department as well to investigate.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Glanders.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, good discussion. I feel the same way about the catalytic converters. You have to think there's something that we could do, not us per se, but I was thinking the provincial government can mandate that they all have serial numbers inscribed in them, and only the registered owner of that serial number can take them to a scrap metal place. And then those places get investigated regularly. So it's crazy to me that that's still going on, but I guess eventually we'll all have EVs and there'll be no more catalytic converters to steal. Thank you for the report. A couple things stood out for me. Well, that we'd had a man in Richmond who was defrauded over $1 million with a cryptocurrency scam on CS41. CS42, I was so pleased, as terrifying as it is, to see the break-and-enter arrest, that a suspect who had broken into an occupied home was arrested and charges are pending. I just want to commend the force on that, and great job. That's one of the most terrifying things I could ever imagine, is someone breaking into my home when I'm there. And it's so scary, and so thank you very much to the RCMP for the great work there. CS46. Great to see that the Speedwatch letters are getting back up to the pre-pandemic levels. The chart above that, the lockout auto crime vehicles, I'm so sorry, but would you mind explaining to me what that is? I see now that it was also a pandemic thing, so in 2019 we issued lots of these letters and then they stopped, but I don't seem to recall what those are.
Thank you for that, to the chair, to Councillor Glanders. The Lockout Auto Crime Program is run by our volunteers, and once the volunteers are deployed, they will, we identify hotspots, first of all, where we believe there's a theft from auto or other vehicle-related crimes are happening. And then our volunteers will attend those locations. They will walk through the parking lots. They will be running the license plate. Sometimes we'll recover stolen vehicles there. But the main purpose being, are there items in the vehicle that are in plain view that may attract someone to break into your vehicle? So based on that, they will leave a notice on the windshield. Pre-COVID, every vehicle that was inspected received a notice. That's why you see thousands of numbers on the top row. But, when COVID happened, obviously, we had less volunteers, and then we also, people were taking those notices, and they were being littered. So we had to change our tactic as to then, okay, let's just give the notices to those vehicles that we believe they're vulnerable to break and enters. So that's why you see those numbers that are low, but that's what essentially is our lockout out of crime managed by our volunteer group.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, what's the difference between the letters and the notices? It says beginning November 2020, letters were issued in place of notices. It's in the footnote.
Yes, it's just a change of practice. Before, it was in a letter format. Now we refer it to as a notice now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, that's it. Thanks. Councillor Day.
Very much. Thank you for the report. Particularly happy with page 44. I was happy to see that in March that, or year to date actually, that there were 0 hate crime files and just 6 hate incident files, down from last year, which had 26. Are we still doing the Hate Has No Place program?
To the chair, to Councillor Day, that campaign is running throughout the year, and through our diversity and inclusion unit, we'll continue to promote peace, harmony, and in the city, and as I have stated before, when it comes to hate crime related investigations, there's 0 tolerance, and we will investigate them to the full extent and prosecute wherever possible.
That's great. And just want to make a comment, the crime trends across jurisdictions. We were finally had the lowest crime rate in the Lower Mainland District. Normally we're duking it out between Coquitlam or Burnaby, but when I saw the chart and saw we actually made it to the lowest crime rate. So I am very happy about that.
Thank you again to the chair, to Councillor Day. Our violent crime rate has remained lowest compared to other big 4. And property crime, because of a little bit of spike in shoplifting and other offenses, but we will manage that. And that has knocked us off from the 2nd spot, but we're working towards and bringing that back to where we were before.
All right, good work.
Great, thanks. Councillor Al.
Yes, Chief, when I read the newspaper and know that you offer a safe place for people to do the transaction, say, wow, this is great. So, do you have the numbers of the users, how many people make use of that kind of safe place?
Through the chair, to Councillor Au, I am aware that there are other municipalities where they have implemented that kind of program. I don't have those numbers yet because our program hasn't started yet. But once it does, we will start keeping track of those stats.
So will it only be offered in Ironwood, location, or including the city center police station?
We will, through the chair, to Councillor Au, the plan is still in the works, and it should be finalized in the coming weeks. So I am currently in discussion with my senior management team is to select an ideal location where people will feel safe to meet and conduct the transactions.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. I don't see any other speakers, so we can get a motion to receive for information.
So move.
That's great, all in favor, good. And the OIC briefing.
Thank you to the chair. There's 2 things I'd like to mention this afternoon. One is the restart of Richmond's night market. The Richmond annual night market has been a proud community tradition since 2000, which is now recognized as the largest night market in North America, and highlighted as an international attraction that draws over 1 million visitors each year. The night market operates on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and also on statutory holidays from April to October. And this year it started on the 28th of April, and it will end on the 9th of October. As with the previous years, your police force will have uniform presence at every night market, and we will provide high visibility police presence with two key objectives. First, to maintain a zero tolerance policy when enforcing federal, provincial legislation and municipal bylaws. And second, to maintain peace and ensure public safety. The second quick highlight I wanted to provide today deals with some historical perspective of policing in Richmond that goes back 123 years. Regarding the first chief of police of Richmond. As you know, that the RCMP was established in Richmond in 1950, so some 70 plus years ago. But even about 50 years before that, in 1897, a young 25-year-old Sandy Alexander Main, who had immigrated to Canada from Nyren, Scotland, came to Richmond, and he was elected as a police constable. And a couple of years later, on April 1st, 1899, he was elected as the first chief constable of Richmond Police. Unfortunately, in April of 1900, Chief Main had set out to investigate theft of tools, and unfortunately him and his dog were murdered by some perpetrators who were later located, arrested, and at that time capital punishment was in place, and one individual was hanged for that offense. But it was important for, and it has been important for your Richmond RCMP to honor those members, and just like we had done with Staff Sergeant Walter Tyrell a few months ago. So your Richmond RCMP, we have a plaque commemorating Chief Constable Alexander Main at our detachment. And I know Councillor McNulty, in my research, I found out that he has done extensive research and has written a nice article. So we will be issuing a news release, or it may already be out as I speak, with a link to Councillor McNulty's research that he has done about murder in Steveston. It's quite unread, really compelling story. Highlights, a police officer 123 plus years ago was set out to do his duty, and he met his demise. So there was along with Councillor McNulty, there was another local resident, Scott Stewart, who happened to be doing some research on capital punishment in Canada, and he came across this story. And as a result of his efforts, Chief Main, his name was added to the Canadian Police and Peace Officer Memorial in Ottawa in 1996. And one of my officers, obviously through social media, started doing research, and it was important for us to pay our respects and remember the first chief of Richmond Police. Thank you.
That's excellent. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just two things, and one, he was the first and I believe the only chief of police in the province of British Columbia that was murdered. Not that it's any distinction, but I support everything the OIC has said. How can the city help out in that? Because this is part of Richmond's history, especially with policing, and whether we put a roll of honor or whatever, or we in Steveston with some sleuthing, we'll call it, we can probably pinpoint within yards of where he was murdered. And whether we should think about a Karen because to me, and I appreciate the work of Scott Stewart sending it to Ottawa, et cetera, because he was a police officer and he could do that. Many people have contacted me for the information that I had, many scholars and what have you. And I think you have the plaque. I'm just wondering whether we could make a referral to staff or Parks Department to look at whether we can. I mean, we're really talking, to be quite frank with you, $5,000. We're not talking a lot of money to add to it and make it, and then have a dedicated celebration in terms of opening or unveiling it at that time. So I support everything that the OIC has said, and we'll wait to see what the press release is. And as you've said, it's quite a interesting story of how everything was found.
Thank you for that, and to the chair, to Councillor McNulty, I did correspond with Ms. Cecilia Isham and was referred to the planning department. So if there's
So
anything,
it's been taken under advisement? Is
Yes.
that what the answer? Okay, I'll
If
leave it
there's
with you.
anything
Good. You're in good hands then.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Bill, just to check, you're good with that?
I'm good, yeah, I'll follow
Okay.
up.
All
I'll
right.
make sure that it happens.
Thank you.
Anything else, Chief?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks very much then, and that's a great initiative, I think, with the Chief of Stevenson, so. Now, we did add 7B on to the agenda, but before I do that, I'd like to go back to the Fire Chief's briefing as well, because I inadvertently skipped over that, and it was unintentional, to be sure. Okay, thanks very much. All right, well, we'll move on to 7B, and I believe we all had information concerning this motion from Councillor Heed. But before we get into the actual motion or any kind of referral, I'd just like to give Councillor Heed the opportunity to introduce the topic, just to ensure that we're all aware of what is being discussed. So if you're ready to do that, take it away, Councillor.
Yes, I did drop this on you last minute, just before the meeting. I sent it out earlier this week. I've had extensive conversation with people that would be part of the stakeholder group for this particular pilot. And remember, I'm just advocating for a pilot. So the actual motion that I'm putting forward is in relation to having this referred to staff to explore how we could move forward this summer on a pilot for the consumption of alcohol beverages in our parks, similar to what other municipalities in the region have in place. If you look at what Vancouver's had, I believe up to 3 years in place. You look at what Port Moody has, you look what Burnaby just approved, all the 3 North Shore municipalities have this in place. It's happening in our parks right now, regardless, albeit not formally endorsed as something that can be done. I think it's incumbent upon us to do what our constituents want us, and they want to get out there and they want to enjoy our parks. You know, we've got great parks. You know, the director of parks here, the general manager of parks, we've got great staff that keep our parks unbelievably in fantastic shape and offer opportunities for people to get out and enjoy this. You know, what the pandemic has done is forced people outside, which is a good thing if we want to draw something positive from the pandemic. And I know the park right across from where I live, which is right by the works yard, people out there enjoying that park in and out, and they're having picnics there, and they're having a beer or a glass of wine there, and they're not harming anyone. And if you look at some of the negative activity that may take place in the park, the RCMP have tools to deal with it. Our bylaw people have tools to deal with it. And we can ensure that whatever measures have to be in place from a safety perspective are in place. And I don't want this to be, again, a bit of a prudish response to what we should be doing in a modern contemporary society here, where we're all responsible people. And remember, we're talking about the responsible people. Regardless, you're going to have the irresponsible people out there, but there's a ways and means to dealing with those irresponsible people. So I think it's wise when the weather is, it's just beautiful out there today. If staff, and I'm not sure that there's an incredible amount of work to do simply because we have so many other municipalities we can look at, and I know the results from some of those municipalities on, certainly what has taken place. And again, the discussions I've had with the Director of Parks, the Director of Bylaws, the Fire Chief, the Police Chief, and I'm sure that if you would like, they would comment on what their feelings are, because I know we don't have a consensus around the table here on this issue, but I think, again, it's something that we can look at as a pilot for the summer.
Okay, thanks very much for that introduction, and if we can get a mover and a seconder for that? Move it. And seconder? I'll second it. Okay, seconded. Okay, so comments from people. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, I know Councillor Heed has talked to stakeholders. Supposedly, I'd like to know who the stakeholder group is. And he has his point of view and a rationale, and I haven't had anybody in Richmond ask me to come and open up the parks for to consume, in my opinion. We've had keep our parks clean. We don't allow smoking in parks. We make sure dogs are tied up, et cetera, et cetera. Just because somebody else has done it and it doesn't necessarily mean to say we have to do it, to be quite frank with you. I'm not convinced with the rationale that I've heard that there is justification for going ahead with doing that and putting everything to it. If I went to a park, I don't want to be walking through a park or picnicking next to somebody that is consuming alcohol or whatever, to be quite frank with you. That's just a personal opinion. I know many of our public would not. So I'm not going to support it at this stage until I get a rationale of why we should be doing it. I don't want to be copycat. We keep referring to other groups that are doing things, et cetera, so they have their own problems and their own situations. And if I'm the only one, I go to enjoy the park. We ask people to enjoy the park. And I guess it's what is the message we're giving out to people with it. I'm sure people are going to come and have their picnic and have 2, 3, 4, 5 beers and jump in their car and drive home. Well, I'm sorry, but it happens, and it also happens down at the pub, okay? And I've been a long proponent of anti-drinking and driving and what have you, and I think I'm entitled to my own opinion, the same as anybody else, and if you don't like it, too bad. Take it to wherever you want, and I'm giving my justification for it. I don't, again, until I can see it, I haven't heard anybody rave in the other areas how successful it was. As a matter of fact, they may have been turning a deaf ear on it. So anyhow, that's just my point of view on it through the chair. Until I'm convinced, we're going to take safety measures. No, we should have had a plan before we go and had it, and an idea, and how we're going to employ staff to do this. Heaven knows what's next coming in parks. So that's just my point of view.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And we'll come back to you to wrap up, Councillor Heed, so that's good. Councillor Day.
I can't vote on this because I don't any longer sit on the safety committee meeting, but if I did, I would support it, and I'll tell you why. Here's my rationale. It's already been happening in other cities successfully. During the pandemic, it was the only way that people could gather and enjoy having a beer or two. The reality is people aren't going to drink, if they're drinking 6 beers in a home or drinking 6 beers at a park, that's the same rationale. They're not going to do that. Most people are very responsible when it comes to drinking and driving. And so we have other successful stories. That's one rationale. It would also support our local breweries and wineries who make very incredible products, and you could buy, go to a specific pilot location and have a local beer or wine made locally. It would support family events. One of the things that we aren't recognizing is that most new apartments and townhouses are so small, you can't have a family gathering. I mean, how many apartments don't we have that are like 400 and 500 square feet? So it would allow for things like birthday parties and whatnot. And my own daughter got married during the pandemic at Peace Arch Park. And when the official part was over, yes, we shared a glass of wine. And not one single person who worked for that park could give a darn. And we didn't bother a single person. So let's move on with the times and be more modern. And I know my family's from Denmark, and it's not uncommon for people to have their lunch and have a beer in a park. And it's not out of control. And the thing is that if there is any activity that is improper, we have the best bylaw officers and the best RCMP officers in the Lower Mainland. Look at the page. You have the lowest crime rate in Richmond as of March 2023. So I say let's get creative and make Richmond a little more fun.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, through the chair. I have a wide range of feelings and thoughts on the topic. I hear what Councillor McNulty is saying about not just copying what other jurisdictions are doing. What I've seen is that other jurisdictions are having issues with the issue of illegal drug use in public areas. And I know this is a totally separate issue, but I just can't help but connect that if you embrace one substance being used in public, then if you don't have a bylaw in place that prohibits illegal drug use, and then I think we do have that, but I just know that we're coming up against the ministry with their approach that they're taking towards drug use being a mental health issue, that they don't want people to feel stigma and have to hide away and use alone. So that there was a few municipalities just recently, there's this article here, that are trying to pass bylaws to prohibit drugs in public spaces. And the ministry's response was that enforcement of bylaws that restrict use do not address underlying causes of addiction and will increase the likelihood of people using drugs alone, which can be life-threatening. So I'm concerned about opening up that whole thing. Myself personally, I'm in the minority in that I don't drink alcohol. So I don't feel like people need to drink alcohol in a public park to enjoy a public park. However, we're supposed to make bylaws that suit the vast majority of people and most people. So I would be open to hearing what the public has to say about this and what the public wants versus what I want, because I agree that many people use a park and bring some wine or a beer and have a picnic, and that's been going on forever in a very responsible way, and yet it's against the law. So I don't want our good law-abiding citizens to keep feeling like they're breaking the law by doing something that's very reasonable. And the people that go to parks and break bottles everywhere and whatnot is most likely people who are underage drinking that aren't allowed to drink in the first place. So I don't see that this pilot would increase any types of reckless drinking, because that drinking is happening illegally already. So yeah, I mean, I am open to it. I would like to know what the public thinks. I noticed some public chiming in on the news article that was already published that this was coming up at our meetings, and it seemed like there's definitely a division of thought out there. The one thing I wanted to mention about it was, it's funny, I was at a children's baseball game, and a team was visiting from a city that allows drinking in public parks, and the team had their cooler and beers, and they were sitting in the stands drinking beers, watching their kids' game. And I thought, this is kind of odd. Like, this is illegal. There's like children playing a game. I wonder if we could do it, you know, school parks, not at school parks. We could have something in there that not at school parks, where there's school fields kind of thing, where children play games, because I just thought that was just kind of odd. I don't know, but that's me. Maybe I'm a bit of a prude. Yeah, so I'm not going to shut it down. I'd like to see what the rest of council thinks about it. And I would like any pilot project to include public consultation. I'd like to know what Richmondites think about it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Al.
Yes. Well, like Councillor Date, I'm not on the committee. I cannot vote on this, but I would oppose to this proposal for the reason that, I mean, we do not have a problem in our parks having people drinking right now. There may be occasional cases, but, you know, they're being dealt with. And my personal experience that I live close by to a park, and then during summertime, there were some people drinking, and then we just called the police, and then they came, and these people were told to leave, and after that, you know, it won't happen again. So I just wonder, you know, if we open this up for drinking, probably it would be a lot of more work for the police and the bylaw officers. And I also noticed that even in Vancouver, they are not talking about having all the parks being available for drinking, and also only some parks will be for a temporary period of time for each year. So I don't know whether or not it's a good use of our resources for the policing and for the bylaw officers to keep an eye, keep working on making sure that people would follow the rules if we have this open up. And I think there are also some gray area. So if you open it to the parks, how about the dike? And how about other places as well? And I also feel odd, you know, when other users of the park, how do they feel about seeing people drinking, to have their children seeing other people drinking in front of them. So I think it will be a more complicated situation. And I think we don't have a problem right now. Why do we create a problem? And why do we have to create a problem that we may have to fix? So as I said, I cannot vote on this one, but I won't be supporting it.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up, so I'll make a couple comments on this one myself. Yeah, I have a fair bit of experience dealing with issues related to public events and the consumption of liquor. You know, was a gold commander for the VPD for all major events, and I've seen the problems associated with liquor consumption, and there's definitely problems that can be attributed to overconsumption of liquor. Many good comments around the table. I'll just make one about illegal activity. The fact that something illegal is already happening, consumption of liquor in a public place, isn't really a good rationale or justification for making it legal. That wouldn't be what I would rest my case on. And in terms of the public, most people not causing any issues or something, that's very true, but I think the chief would probably back me up that the police spend 95% of their time dealing with probably 3% of the population. So most people would be responsible, but it still can create a large impact on your calls for service, not just for police, but also for fire and also for ambulance and also for bylaws. Having said that, we do have some legislative changes that have happened since I was actively involved in doing this kind of thing. And I also have a serious concern about the unintended consequences of changing our rules. But what we're being asked to do today is to have staff do a report and do some research into what would be a pilot project. And I have a lot of concerns before I would vote on approving this in an entire meeting of council or a GP. Things like locations, things like which parks, things like which times. There's a lot of things that have to be addressed before I would vote to approve it in a full meeting. But I will support it today in terms of going forward to be researched and to have more questions answered. But I think, I don't know if it can be done in time for the summer. That'll be something that maybe staff can talk about. And I'll let you wrap up right now, Councillor Heed, but if you're good with it, I think it'd probably be good if it passes to come back to GP. So go ahead and wrap up if you like.
Yeah, if you prefer a wrap up without hearing from any of our staff, that's fine. But I just want to make a point here is we're asking staff to look at a pilot project. We're asking staff to evaluate that pilot project, and we've got excellent people to evaluate it after, which includes the public feedback, which is important. You got to understand, we're not etching in stone. It's a pilot for the summer, okay? And leave it up to staff, Director Gross, with his expertise around the parks here to determine what parks could work with this particular, leave it up to them. That's why they're there in their positions, because they're the experts in those areas, okay? I think we've got to try things. Councillor Day makes some really good points there with respect to people getting out and enjoying the Richmond. We've got, others that are opposed to it. I don't necessarily support their rationale. I think it's rather archaic, to be quite frank, with respect to that. I think it's a flawed ideology around really what we're doing with some of our enjoyment, social activities here in Richmond. It's almost like the people that believe that marijuana is a gateway drugs to people that are dying of fentanyl. As you know, that's been proven negative over and over and over and evaluated. But still, people are so buried in their ideology, that's what they think. And I think we've got somewhat of the same thing happening here with respect to going on. So all I'm asking is, the weather's getting nicer, staff, if they have the ability, and I'd like to maybe hear from Mr. Corrado, Mr. Gross, and even Cecilia with respect to whether the time frame they can come up with something and bring it back to GP with respect to what we can do by, say, the end of May, the beginning of June.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, I hear that we are supposed to include public consultation in this round, so that would be.
Not necessarily true. The public consultation.
Well, just.
But really, realistically, that's not what the motion is. The motion is not the public consultation. The motion is the pilot project.
Right, we'll just let Ms. Hatcham finish her answer.
The point of information. We're
Okay.
asking
Sorry,
staff
that it's not
to
on
make a
this
decision
section.
before we've even agreed to go forward or not. And I think that you put staff in a very bad situation. If you want to follow process, and if it wins, I will accept what the result is. But staff should not be commenting right now. Councillor Heed put something on the table for this committee to adjudicate, not the chief of police, not anybody else. The five of us have to make a decision. So, Mr. Chair, sorry, I think Councillor Heed is out of order, and I think he's.
Point of order.
You're out of order
Staff,
because you should
we
not
will
be
make the
asking staff.
decision at the
Make
end of the day by
motion
a
and let's
committee.
vote on
I
it.
made the motion, but we've got to have the
My question
information.
on the motion.
Hey, guys,
Question on
let's
the motion.
have a little
You don't know what
timeout
you're
right now.
talking about.
Yeah, I do know what process is.
Okay.
I'll go with
talk
either wherever it
Talk to
goes, but we should be voting,
Okay,
not
guys.
whether we can do it or not. I don't know.
Let's end that discussion
That's
for
what
now.
you're
Thank you
asking
very,
them to do.
It's my motion.
councillors,
Put on the floor.
councillors, let's end that part of the discussion, please. Ms. Hatcham, on the timing of it, I think that's something that you can bring back to us and take it under advisement. So if you can have a seat, that'd be great. Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
And the
I just-
motion is?
Yeah, I just want to get that.
I don't have the exact motion.
Yeah,
Let's have
so
it. Once more, please, thank you. I appreciate
You
it.
guys have it? Okay.
All right, he's going to read it. I'm going to listen.
Staff to explore how we could move forward this summer on a pilot for the consumption of alcohol beverages in our parks, similar to what other municipalities in the regions have in place.
Okay, good.
That's clear.
Thanks.
Okay.
So that's a motion?
Yes.
It's on the floor? I don't see any other hands from committee, so we're going to call the question. All in favor of the motion? Those opposed? Okay, it passes with Councillor McNulty opposed, and that'll come back to GP. Okay, thanks very much for that. That was fun. Now, before we adjourn, I actually did want to mention a couple things. Oh yeah, manager's report. We'll do that first. Thank you very much. So any manager reports?
Through the chair, just to note that staff in community safety will be out at to support Public Works Open House, so fire, police, and the SPCA will be there. So please advertise, have your children come out, have fun with us.
The Public Works Open House.
May 13th.
Thanks very much. Yeah, that's coming up for everybody, and I'll be there with my grandchildren, so please come. I'll need all the help I can get. Anything else for managers' reports? Don't see any, but I do have a couple comments just before we adjourn, if you can be patient and bear with me. Councillor Day, you did bring up the Vulcan Way project, and I wanted to just mention that as well, because those were good comments. I just wanted to publicly compliment the staff for the job they did with the joint operations team. That may seem like a simple thing to people, like, oh, just go move the people who are in the RVs, but it's not. So city staff, bylaws, the RCMP, fire, the province, Vancouver Coastal Health, BC Ambulance, and I think particular credit to our bylaw people. That is a complex issue because you're dealing with homelessness, as was mentioned by Councillor Day, I believe. It's a blended response. It's got a blend of compassion and firmness, enforcement and understanding, and finding people other avenues to make their lives work out. So I just want to really say that when I read that memo, as Councillor Day already mentioned, that was excellent. And it made me think that that is a model for us going forward to deal with other complex issues. And you don't always take every piece of the model, but there are pieces, and it's the relationships that you build with other agencies that allow you to tap into that resource. And I thought it was excellent. One other thing I wanted to mention, actually two other things really quickly. Ray Sawada had a service. He's a young Richmond resident, born and raised on April 21st. He was a Burnaby firefighter for a few years. He's got relatives, a brother-in-law, and his father-in-law is a retired Richmond firefighter. They're in the Richmond Fire Department. Long roots in the community. A tragic death leaves behind a wife and two young daughters. The reason I bring it up here is because I just think it's important to recognize how the community came together. Richmond Fire Services, Richmond RCMP were there. Richmond Fire Services worked really hard with Burnaby. A lot of other stakeholder groups in the community, from hockey to other volunteer things. And Ray was a volunteer in the community too. Just an outstanding individual. And it was very impressive to see how Richmond came together for that. And yeah, I wanted to acknowledge that. Particular to the Richmond Fire Department, so thank you very much. And to the Mounties, I just wanted to say for the coronation that I'm sure all watched. I know I was required to record about 52 hours of it at my house.
Best horses in the parade.
That's right. The RCMP at the beginning of the parade, a place of honor and prestige, quite frankly, looked fantastic. I think there were 4 with leaders, so 5 altogether, I think. The horses looked beautiful. The riders looked calm. The horses were about the most calm horses in the parade, I think. And I just thought it looked fantastic. And it's quite a feather in your cap, so to speak, to be put in that position in that parade, because there were a lot of people participating from around the world. So your riders looked great. And if that's it, we can call for adjournment. Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks.